The Nexus 1000V can use two different control modes to connect between the virtual Ethernet modules and the virtual supervisor modules. Layer 2 mode, which requires Layer 2 connectivity through control and packet interface to all VM modules, and Layer 3 mode, which is recommended, which requires an IP address to be assigned to the VEM and uses Layer 3 to communicate between the VSM and the VEM. If you're going to use Layer 3 for communication between the VSM and the VEM, two options for the Layer 3 control interface exist. First, to use the Management 0, and second, to use the control interface. Cisco recommends that you use Management 0. You can also use the Control 0 to separate control and management traffic. Management and control use different VRFs. Similar to other Nexus devices, there is a management VRF and a default VRF. The primary and secondary VSM still need to be Layer 2 adjacent. For VSM connectivity, or virtual supervisor connectivity to VMware vCenter, VSM connects to the vCenter using an SSL connection. It uses a plugin that contains an SSL certificate. The VSM talks to vCenter using VMware's API, and it's a push-pull data model to and from vCenter. VSMs are also tied to a specific VMware data center. Multiple VSMs tied to the same VMware data center is allowed. Next, we're going to take a look at a Nexus 1000V switch. We're going to explore the CLI, we're going to explore the Nexus 1000V interfaces, and we're going to explore the port profiles. Here I have my Nexus 1000V switch. If I do a show version, I can see the operating system and the NXOS version that I'm running. You'll notice that it looks a lot like Nexus 7000 or 5000 or other Nexus device. Also, if I do a show module, I can see the different modules that I have available to me. In this case, I'm only using the virtual supervisor module, so there's only one of those. If I had VEMs, you would see those listed, as well as if I had a second virtual supervisor module, you would see that listed as well. I can do a show run just like any other Nexus switch. I can also do a show interface brief to see the different interfaces that I have. Right now I only have a management and a control interface that are up. If I do a show run interface management 0, I can see the configuration for my management 0 interface, and there is none. I would configure this interface similar to how I would configure any other Nexus management 0 interface. And remember, that interface is in a different VRF than the control 0 interface. Now there's a couple different things that I can do with the Nexus 1000 to take a look at how it's interacting with vCenter. The first thing I can do is say show SVS domain. Here I can see how the Nexus 1000V is set up and how it's communicating with the VEMs, as well as if it's communicating with my vCenter. In this case, the config push to vCenter failed because there's a configuration failure with vCenter. If I want to check my connection to vCenter, I would do a show SVS connections. Here I can see that I don't have any, which is normally a bad thing. In order to make configuration changes to the Nexus 1000V, I have to do the same thing that I normally do to a Nexus switch. I have to go to the config T prompt. Once I'm in that prompt, I can go ahead and modify port profiles. I can then create a profile for my VMware server called VMware Web. Inside of this profile, I can now apply any of the settings that I might apply to a port. There's also another thing to remember with port profiles. Before I will see this information get pushed to vCenter, I have to no shut the port, which tells me the default state that I want the port in, and then I have to type state enabled. Once I type state enabled, it will push the port profile named VMware Web to the VMware vCenter server. As you can see, the Nexus 1000V is very similar to other Nexus switches. Please take some time and look over the installation and upgrade guides, as well as the configuration guides and the command reference guides for the Nexus 1000V. Please join me for the next lesson, verifying initial setup and operation for the Nexus 1000V.